All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL props video. Going to be touching on the top prop bets here for Sunday in Week 10. We take a peek at the first game. We got the Patriots versus the Colts. This is going to be about a 2-point spread, and the over and under is going to be set at 43. So a decently high-scoring game for these two offenses, I would say. And that's because, the Patriots defense is pretty banged up. We just saw Sam Howell, look really good against them. And then looking at the Colts, their pass defense has been one in which you can attack pretty easily as well thus far this season. The biggest piece of injury news, I would say, for the Patriots is that Devontae Parker is going to be out, and we'll see. I think that's going to lead to one of the better prop bets we were getting really for the whole week in Hunter Henry. And so what I mean by that is when we look at Hunter Henry, we are seeing that his fantasy score prop here is set at 7. To me, that's too low. Last week, he ended up getting 7 targets, 4 receptions, 39 yards. He did score a touchdown as well. And all in all, I would say 4 players that are likely to score a touchdown on this team. It's probably both Zeke and Stevenson, number 1, and then probably Hunter Henry, especially with Parker out. And I don't think that that's a shock that he saw more targets in that game. Now, my issue with him is the simple fact that he wasn't able to create that much separation last week. That's definitely a concern to me, but all in all, that is seemingly a good one. And then we could also stack that with Mac Jones for over 13.5 for a fantasy score. Now, Mac Jones probably, I don't know, last week was weird. He had some really impressive throws, like the throw to Hunter Henry 4 touchdown was impressive, but they also missed Tyquan Thornton on what should have been a touchdown there. So very much been someone that's been hit or miss. If we look at the fantasy score for him, as of recent, we are seeing definitely more hit or miss, but again, really missed a couple of throws that all in all, I think he typically does make. We probably need him to rush the football here, but all in all, I do like stacking him with Hunter Henry there. I think Henry is going to be the best individual prop that we have there. Let's go ahead and look at the other side of the football. Oh, guys, as well, I will say Demario Douglas at 4 receptions that we're getting. I think that's too low. He's going to be playing a full allotment of snaps, probably 80% of the snaps. They're going to force him the football. I think this has a great chance of being a push. I think it has really just a strong chance of hitting as well, especially given the fact that they ran out Jalen Reagor for 70% of the snaps. They don't want to do that. They need to get Douglas the ball. He honestly has looked like their best offensive weapon, so let's get into the football. Looking at the other side of the football in this game, we got the Colts. And to me, it's very interesting that Gardner Minshew is popping up for over 14.5 for a fantasy score, and I'm not saying that's wrong, and it's probably one that we want to go in on a little bit. And I say that because his Patriots defense has been bad. This is arguably going to be one of his better matchups of the season thus far as well. And so the issue that I have is that we can't really stack him with anyone. But I don't mind Hunter Henry, Mac Jones, and Gardner Minshew for over their fantasy score on this slate, and we're seeing that those are seemingly a few of the better ones that we are getting. Jonathan Taylor's fantasy score is seemingly correct. I will say if he does score a touchdown, probably going to get the over there. Let's go ahead and move on into the next game. In the next game, we got the Titans versus the Buccaneers. A very interesting game. We can see the over and under is set at 39. The point spread is about 1.5 currently. Looking at the injury report, do need to get an update on Trey Palmer, currently questionable with a neck injury. If he sits, that might just lead to Cade Otton, Chris Godwin, and also Mike Evans just getting a couple more targets in the game. Looking at the Titans, unfortunate that Treylon Burks is out. That could lead to, Hopkins getting some targets. I just want to see them actually throw the football to Tajay Spears a little bit more. And so let's see if we're getting any good props really in this game. So we go ahead and start out with the Bucs. Again, Baker Mayfield for over fantasy score is one that's casually popping up. We can see the average sportsbook line would have it set at 17.5. I don't know if I agree with that, guys. Baker, it is a good matchup. Don't get me wrong. But I know it's because the social media accounts and whatnot are hyping him up more than they should be. Like, people are thinking he's played much better than it's looked on film. Like, all in all, if they had a good quarterback here, they'd probably be one of the best teams in the league. And I think all in all, if you put in most quarterbacks, like I'll touch on the quarterback like Kenny Pickett, Jordan Love, if you put those two quarterbacks in this system, like they're doing probably a little bit better. Like, you put Mac Jones in this system, probably doing a little bit better. Like, don't get me wrong, played well against Houston. Now, it's probably his best game of the season given the matchup. But all in all, we look at his matchups, guys, like Buffalo, Atlanta, Detroit. The Saints he played well against. That was a more difficult matchup. But Philly, Chicago, Minnesota, like, he's had probably one of the easier schedules thus far, and it's going to continue against Tennessee. So, like, you would expect him to do well. I would say the only way I can get to Baker Mayfield for an over fantasy score is if you're also doing that with, let's say, Mike Evans, but we're seeing that's not one we want to use, or Chris Godwin. Again, we're not seeing that's one that we want to use. So for me, I'm probably just staying away. I can't back a quarterback that's where teams like winning despite of them. I don't know. It's just probably a stay away. And that's really all we got there. So let's move on into the Titans. We do know that Will Levis is going to be starting in this game. Does that matter? Probably not. Now, I do think it's worth pointing out that his fantasy score is seemingly undervalued on PrizePicks. The only reason why I might entertain this is the simple fact that the Bucs are pretty much a funnel defense. They've been the worst defense in the league in terms of giving up production to the quarterback position. Now, Will Levis predictably struggled last week. And my worry is that he's probably going to struggle this week as well, given the fact that the Bucs are so good at stopping the run. You look at why he was successful against the Falcons. Well, apparently one, that's the Falcons. We just saw Josh Dobbs look super impressive against them. They've made quarterbacks look good thus far this season. But two, they were able to establish the run and then really get the play action game going. With them not being successful doing that last week, we saw Will Levis kind of struggle in that game, predictably so. He has looked good throwing the football. He's basically the exact same thing as Ryan Tannehill, just younger, and that's why they're rolling with him. And so I struggled to get there in this game. Like, yes, it is a better matchup, but the fact that they won't be able to rush the football does worry me. And maybe they do. Maybe the Titans are able to get it going, but it's going to be a very difficult matchup for them on the ground game. So I do expect Henry to struggle. And I'm kind of hoping that we can see more of Tajay Spears. Like, I would like him for over 15.5 receiving yards, but that seems a little bit too thin. He has gotten 4 and 3 receptions the last 2 weeks. Like, he should be more involved in the receiving game. Like, he should have more yards than he's had. And if you watch the film or if you saw him like play in that last game, you saw it. It's like eye-popping how good this guy is. He just hasn't been able to really get the ball in space just yet, which is unfortunate, but I do think it's just a matter of time until he does have a big game. Maybe that happens this week. We are seeing Derrick Henry for under receiving yards at 13.5. I mean, probably same thing as receptions. We're seeing that should probably be one that we're betting the under on now. The reason why it's at 2 is because it's probably going to be a push. We can see the average sportsbook line is heavily favoring the over at 1.5, and that's why PrizePicks and Underdog have it at 2. All in all, probably just staying away from him. We see Okonkwo for 7.5 for a fantasy score. Under is being favored there, which is kind of strange because I do think he has a good chance to get to 3 receptions, which is a prop bet for him. But all in all, this game does feel a little bit too thin. I don't like betting on those 2 quarterbacks for over fantasy score. So let's go ahead and move on into the next game. In the next game, we got the Packers versus the Steelers, and that's kind of why I said what I said with Baker. Looking at this game, it is a 3.5 point spread, and the over and under is set at 38.7. Looking at the injuries, Jair Alexander is currently doubtful. So that should mean that Deontay Johnson should have a better game. Obviously, they traded Russell Douglas because, well, they have a pretty talented cornerback in Valentine. Although now that we're going to see some depth concerns, so I do expect Deontay Johnson to have himself a pretty good game. Quay Walker's out for the Packers, and it's kind of the same story, different week for them, where they've been pretty banged up, which has probably led to a lot of the mistakes that they've been making on both offense and defense. You watch their games, guys. It was really frustrating up until really the second half of last week, where like literally for the past 5 weeks, they have been probably averaging like 2 mistakes per series on both sides of the football. And I'm not even joking, whether it's some sort of blocking assignment, the wrong route being run, a drop, but mostly penalties. They've been the most penalized team in the league, so they've been very annoying. Now, last week, finally, for about their last 3, I think, series it was, on offense, no mistakes. Defensively, less mistakes. But yeah, on offense, we saw 0 mistakes made that I noticed. And guess what happened? They scored 10 points. They scored a field goal and a touchdown. And so a lot of people I have noticed are betting the Steelers to cover, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but I do want to point out that that's really dependent on the Packers not making those same mistakes that they had been making. And don't get me wrong, they've been high school mistakes, but at the same time, they are high school mistakes. Like those are mistakes that should be cleaned up. Like the stupid penalties that they have should be cleaned up. And so when we're seeing that we should be betting on Jordan Love for over 14.5 for a fantasy score, I'm kind of okay with that. Now we are going to see that it's going to be a better bet on Underdog, but all in all, like you would argue he should be able to get there. And again, that is very much dependent on the team just not making those dumb mistakes. Like it's week 10. You shouldn't be making those mistakes. Heck, you shouldn't be making those mistakes really past week 2. And it did somewhat feel like a turning point. Now, granted, it was the Rams, but granted, it's the Steelers. Like, all in all, not a terrible matchup. And so really, a lot of this game just depends on that. I just want to make that clear. Like, the mistakes have been there, but when they haven't, they look good. And so Jordan Love for over a fantasy score, I'm perfectly fine doing that. And I'm fine doing that in a stack with Christian Watson. And the annoying part of that is you look at Christian Watson last week, he made an awesome catch at the end of the game. Like one of the best catches of probably the NFL season, really showing his athletic ability on that play. The annoying part of that is if he even displays half of his ball skills that he displayed on that play on any one of his like 7 end zone targets that he's gotten in the last 3 weeks, he gets a touchdown on those plays. He had one earlier in the game in which A lot of people said it was an underthrown pass by Jordan Love, which, albeit maybe, at the same time, all Christian Watson had to do was stop and catch the ball. It hits him right in the hands. It's an easy catch. You got to make that, buddy. And it's just crazy. He only had 2 targets, don't get me wrong, but it's just crazy that he made that catch at the end of the game when he dropped what should have been an easy touchdown. And really, he's been a very tilting player because the production has been there. Like, he really should have had a touchdown in the last 3 games, and he really should be going off. He just hasn't caught the ball. And then he makes that catch. It's like, what are we doing here? But all in all, I don't mind this as a stack, and that's probably the only way we get there. Again, Jordan Love looks good when his team doesn't really make mistakes around him when they get him into 3rd and longs and whatnot. Yeah, any quarterback's going to struggle. We are seeing Wicks for over 12.5 being a seemingly good one. The average sportsbook line for receiving yards, we have the average sportsbook line at 13.5, where they're slightly favoring the over there. And I want to call out with this one that we are seeing Wicks playing about 33% of the snaps. And all in all, he has been someone that has been impressive. He's had 4 targets the last 2 weeks. He did have kind of a funny fumble, kind of an unlucky fumble in the last game. But all in all, he has been someone that has been impressive. And we can see he has been able to get that over in 3 straight games. I kind of expect him to get more involved. We're seeing that Aaron Jones for over 12.5 rushing attempts is seemingly a good one as well. That's a little bit worrisome. We did see Aaron Jones get 57% of the snaps last week, and if he does get 57% of the snaps again, it would be nice to see him get those carries. The Steelers are a team in which you can rush the football against, had 20 carries in the last game, which to me, I don't know. They were ahead in that game, and it does feel a little bit game script dependent, where, again, they were actually able to run an actual NFL offense. They were actually able to use their playbook the way that probably Matt LaFleur designed it that game, where, it really is tough to play call a game when you go from 1st and 10 to 1st and 15, or to go from 2nd and 5 to 2nd and 15. Like, that just throws off the whole offense. And so again, if they're not making mistakes, Aaron Jones will get over 12.5 rushing attempts. Jordan Love will get over his fantasy score, and Christian Watson will get over his fantasy score. If they are making mistakes, then the Steelers are probably going to be playing with the lead, and then all of these will probably be tough to get to. And for what it's worth, guys, I know I'm a Packers fan. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Luke Musgrave, there we go, buddy. There we go. Finally, Luke Musgrave had an open play that he didn't mess up. I mean, there we go, buddy. Like, he really should be a top 10 tight end in like season-long leagues. It's just the first 3 games, he had literally made just some terrible mistakes, like ball skill mistakes. And it was just nice to see him not mess up an easy touchdown play. And again, it did kind of feel like finally, like it felt like a correction week. Now we look at the Steelers, definitely an interesting spot for them. I mentioned Deontay Johnson should get a better matchup without having Jair Alexander in that game. And that's a really big point because we know Deontay Johnson already moves around on the offense. And I think that this data hasn't really updated to reflect that just yet. And that's probably because it hasn't been confirmed. But I like Deontay Johnson this week in terms of like DFS. But let's see where we are getting his props. So 5.5 receptions. I would argue we should probably be buying the over. Again, with Jair Alexander doubtful. Now, he shadowed Deontay Johnson every play because Deontay Johnson moves around. But all in all, I think that that's a very good prop that we are getting. His 14-4 fantasy score, that's there because, he scored a touchdown finally. And we can see, just do the math, 6 receptions, 60 yards, that's 12 points. So, yeah, if he scores a touchdown, he's going to get that over. If not worth it. Najee Harris for over 13.5 rushing attempts, probably a little bit too thin for me. Jaylen Warren, again, like these are 2 game script dependent ones. Like I would say, yeah, if the Steelers are playing with the lead, then Najee Harris is going to get over 13.5 rushing attempts. If they're playing from behind, Jaylen Warren should be able to get 3 receptions in that game. We look at Kenny Pickett, again, fantasy score casually popping up in there. And so with that, let's go ahead and move on into the next game. We got the Saints versus the Vikings. Looking at it, it is a 41 over and under. The point spread is set at about 3 in favor of the Saints winning it. So looking at the injury report, the Saints are pretty healthy for the most part. Looking at the Vikings, they're pretty banged up. Now, Jaron Hall being out, obviously an upgrade with Josh Dobbs. Cam Akers is going to be out, which typically that's just going to mean that Madison is going to get his normal snap share. I think you kind of can just combine their production. They look the same. Jefferson most likely still out. TJ Hockenson questionable with the rib injury. He's expected to play, although he's going to be banged up. KJ Osborne questionable with a concussion. Got to see if he's going to play. Probably not, which means Tristan Jackson is going to get some work in this game, which is a player that I like coming out of college as like a value sleeper draft pick for a team. He had himself a good game last week. We'll see if that continues. I'm kind of excited to follow that. And obviously they got Josh Dobbs there, which all in all, shouldn't hinder too much production for Vikings players. So let's go ahead and start out with the Vikings in this game. And so right now we are kind of seeing Josh Dobbs being projected for under his fantasy score at 15.5. And that's probably being elevated simply because of the great game that he had. It was an awesome moment. All in all, I don't know if we want to be touching it too much. It does feel to be a little bit spiked up. And like even when he was with the Cardinals, he wasn't exactly getting the over too much in that same situation. And like Atlanta is a pretty good matchup. Now the Saints, they're very much hit or miss defensively. I don't know. That just seems like one we should probably be staying away from. We are seeing Alexander Mattison and also Jordan Addison are going to be good fantasy score props. You could do Josh Dobbs rush yards. Well, let's touch on these two. I think these two, there's something there to them, and they're probably going to be good props for us. So looking at Jordan Addison, he's someone that probably should be force-fed the football in this game, especially if KJ Osborne sits. He ended up with 7 targets in the last game, 5 receptions, 50 yards. I think that's kind of what we can expect. So yeah, it might be a little bit too thin, but he probably, more likely than not, he would get the over. And we can see the average sportsbook line would have it set at 11.4, and also the projection data would have it set at 12.4. And heck, even if we look at the props that we're getting for him, we can see that they are not valuing in a touchdown really at all in this. You know, they're pretty much saying he's going to get 5 receptions for 50 yards. And so a pretty good prop that we are getting there. And heck, even the reception one is probably a little bit too low. Josh Dobbs, we saw in Arizona, he was able to get the ball to Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz, Trey McBride, you know, the players that he needed to in terms of offensive production. And I would argue the offensive coordinator or the offensive scheme here is a little bit more friendly for him. If anything, it should be a push. Let's take a peek at the Alexander Mattison one for receiving yards at 12.5. That is seemingly too low. It might get bumped up to 13.5, but that still might be something that we're going in on. Looking at it, he had 2 targets for 49 yards, and he has been someone that has been getting some targets, but I really think we need to take a peek at Cam Akers' production as well in the receiving game. 3 targets, 13 yards, 1 target, 6 yards. 3 targets, 2 receptions, 30 yards. So that seemingly should go all to Madison. And I actually don't mind Madison for over his fantasy score. That has about a 53% chance to hit. Again, if you combine the production from Akers and Madison, it's a seemingly pretty good running back. And so we look at the snap counts from them. Madison, he had been seeing a snap share get cut into by Cam Akers because Cam Akers has looked pretty decent. And so if we get Addison playing about, 70 to 80% of the snaps again, he should be a productive running back. Now we're going to see Ty Chandler mixed in there most likely, but I don't think they've kind of told us what they think about Ty Chandler when they went and traded for Cam Akers. So yeah, we got some good props there. Let's go ahead and take a peek at the Saints. And it is noteworthy, I believe. I just saw this on Twitter. I didn't get a chance to confirm it. That Michael Thomas, I believe he got arrested for something stupid. Like literally what I saw was that I didn't get a chance to confirm if this is right. Like he was mad at someone for parking in front of his house, and then the person pulled out their phone and was sticking their phone in his face, and then he didn't like that, which all in all, a lot of people could probably understand. So gotta confirm that he's gonna play, but if he does play, now he might be a little bit pissed off, and he could have himself a good game. And at 9 for the PrizePicks line, that seemingly is probably a little bit too low for a guy that's probably gonna get 5 catches for 50 yards or so. I don't mind that. We are seeing probably a little bit of a stacking opportunity with Michael Thomas, Derek Carr over pass completions, because if Michael Thomas is going to get over his fantasy score, it's probably going to lead to 5 receptions for him. Then we're also going to see Chris Olave at 13 is also being favored for the over there. And again, if Carr is going to be getting over 21.5 for pass completions, then it's going to come at the hands of Olave and Michael Thomas having a decent amount of receptions. And the data kind of likes that as well for Olave, at least. I will say Juwan Johnson, I'm somewhat interested in him as a play. He was someone that I was pretty high on at the start of the season. Really had a lackluster season at the start, but he was playing a heavy snap share. And then last week we saw him get up to 75% of the snaps as well. Last week he's someone that had a 20% target share. And I don't know, I feel like that should kind of be expected. I shouldn't say 20%, but 10 to 20%, let's just say 15% target share. That's kind of what we saw last year. And Derek Carr is a quarterback that is likely to throw it to the tight end position. And so we saw early on this season 5, 3, 4. Now Carolina, we have learned that that's just a tough matchup. And so the Colts didn't play a full allotment of snaps. And then last week against the Bears, I think we can expect him to be involved in this offense. I would rather get a receptions-based prop, but we're not getting that for him just yet. So I don't mind over receiving yards, although maybe a little bit too thin. Let's go ahead and move on into the next game here. And man, I'm kind of liking this slate more than the past ones because we are getting a lot of good game scripting bets that we can be on. Looking at the Niners versus Jaguars, the Jaguars only 3-point dogs in this game. I find that kind of crazy with Deebo Samuel back and really the Niners getting a chance to rest. 45 is the over and under for this game, so seemingly going to be an appealing game. Looking at the injury reports, offensively, the Niners are pretty healthy. Looking at the Jaguars, also pretty healthy. Zay Jones is currently out. That doesn't really change much based off of what we have seen over the past few weeks. So looking at the prop bets that we are getting in this game, we do see Brock Purdy for under INTs at 0.5 is a good one. I actually don't mind that. Brandon Ayuk for over 4.5 receptions is a very good one as well. Yes, you probably expect his production to fall off a little bit here, but at the same time, like, I don't think that's going to change in this game going against the Jaguars. Like Deebo Samuel, sure, he could get force fed the football in this game. I don't think anyone would be shocked if that does occur, but Ayuk has been someone that's been getting targeted heavily. 9, 6, 10, 7, 6, 6, 8, and yes, some of those games were with Deebo, but you look at how you attack the Jaguars, it is going to be in the passing game, and Deebo is someone that I think will get some more work as well. And so let's just look at a couple of the props that we're getting here. Ayuk over 4.5 receptions. I like that. That should correlate well though with George Kittle getting under 3.5 as well. And the matchup is a little bit better for the receivers than it is for the tight ends. And that's the thing with George Kittle. It's like, yes, we expected him to step up with Deebo Samuel off the field, and that's what happened. Now with Samuel back, I kind of expect him to have a lackluster game. From there, Purdy over rush yards, if you want to roll with that, you can. I feel like it's pretty simple, the ones that we want to be on for this side of the football, like that's fine. Let's go ahead and take a peek at the Jaguars. The Jaguars are frustrating. Again, Trevor Lawrence is super inconsistent as a thrower. I feel like he's another quarterback that, like, if he wasn't the first overall pick, they might be calling him a bust, especially given the weapons that he has this year. Now, his quarterback rating has been good, don't get me wrong, but he is still missing some simple throws. And don't get me wrong, he's gotten better and better each and every start. And I still think, yes, the ceiling is there for him, but I just feel like the hype doesn't match the production per se. People are trying to call him an MVP candidate. Some people, not a lot, right? Saying that he has that ability this season, just not there yet. And with that inconsistency, it's tough to trust any of the pass catchers, and that's what we are seeing. And so when we're seeing the fantasy score here, and I would like this bet a little bit better on underdog there where it's 18, I'm fine betting the under there on underdog at 18. And on PrizePicks, we're probably just staying away from it. We are seeing Travis Etienne over receiving yards at 22.5 is seemingly a good one. The average sportsbook line would have it set at 24, so that's a pretty good edge. Christian Kirk's kind of interesting if this game is that high scoring. Yeah, he probably does get over 12. I was actually curious. Are we getting an Evan Ingram one? Yeah, so his is all the way up to 11.5, guys, for fantasy score, and that's probably something that we are just going to stay away from now. That's been corrected to where it should be. With that, let's go ahead and move on to the next games. We got the Texans versus the Bengals, 6-point spread, 47 for the over and under. So a very high scoring game in this game, but the Bengals defense has been a defense that has been playing better. It does seem like Jamar Chase is going to play in this game, but T Higgins is out. So the last time we saw T Higgins out, it meant that Trenton Irwin was getting a lot more work in that game. And like he literally came in and played 75% of the snaps. Now I was wondering if that was something that they saw kind of game plan wise, or if they just like him as their third, weapon. Now, I don't want to butcher his last name, but this is a guy that really stood out in preseason. He's been productive thus far. It wouldn't be surprising to see him get 40% of the snaps, but I think the expectation is that Trenton Irwin is going to be the guy stepping up. That being said, Tyler Boyd is going to be playing a bunch like he has been this whole season, but he should get a little bit more work in this game. He's probably someone that I want to be looking at. Then we take a peek at the other side of the football. Nico Collins listed as out. That is big news. Now, Robert Woods could be back in this game, but we also know that Dameon Pierce is out as well. So they got two starters out, probably two of their better starters out. And so I think the expectation is that Noah Brown's going to get more work, but also Tank Dell should be someone that gets a lot of work in this game as well. So I'm not sure how many props we're going to get for these teams just yet. Let's see. Yeah, Noah Brown we're getting for over 41.5 receiving yards. I'm not sure if that's one I would necessarily want to go in on. Now, he did play 74% of the snaps and had a good game. Like, he went off, don't get me wrong. And given the game over and under, I guess it makes sense. But like if Robert Woods is back, you kind of expect him to be the guy there. So it might feel a little bit too thin to me. And I kind of feel like this is a game in which Houston as a whole will probably struggle. And that's seemingly the only good prop bet that we are getting. We see Tank Dell, receiving yards, 56. Honestly, I think that's a better bet on one of the sports books. I want to see if we're getting a receptions prop for him. I don't think we are. Yeah, we're not. I would say his receptions prop will probably come in at 3.5 or even 4.5, probably 4 then. Then I would probably want to stay away from it. I like the Bengals defense. I don't know if we want to attack this spot for the Houston Texans, especially given the props that we currently have. So for the Bengals, I do think Tyler Boyd's going to be the player that we want to be targeting here. We're just not getting any props for him just yet. Tyler Boyd is someone, the last time that we saw T. Higgins out, he nearly had a touchdown in that game, just missed it, like literally made an awesome play. And he's been someone that has been involved in this offense. 5 targets last week, 3 against the Niners, did have a touchdown. But we saw, when Higgins was banged up, look at this target share, 7, 9, 8. And so that's kind of my expectation. So if we can get a good receptions prop on him, like if he has a 3.5 receptions prop, I'm probably betting the over there. Jamar Chase, if he's healthy, you do expect him to get heavily involved in the offense, and he'd probably end up with like 7 receptions as well. So all in all, I don't know, this game feels like a stay away to me. I just don't love this game, even though it is a higher scoring game. And that's partially due to the Texans being a good defense. They've been pretty strong defensively for most of the season. Then we get into the Browns versus the Ravens. An ugly game, just given the fact that both defenses have looked good. The Ravens are going to be 6.5 point favorites, which, did I miss some news here? Is Watson out? No. Is Cooper out? No. What is going on here? I would say Cleveland's the better team. I just got Watson's in, Cooper's in, Ford's in, Njoku's in. What an interesting line. You got Watson being 1 more week healthy, which is seemingly a good thing. Yeah, bet Cleveland to maybe even win, but cover at 6.5. That's a little strange to me. Like, don't get me wrong, the Ravens defense has been impressive, but they played Houston in CJ Stroud's first start. Okay, so you expect them to do well. They played the Bengals with Joe Burrow not looking like he has the last couple of weeks. The game against Indy, I believe Minshew played most of that game. He might have even started. Then they played Cleveland with DTR at quarterback, and he struggled terribly. Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett's terrible. Tennessee, doesn't really matter whether it was Will Levis or Ryan Tannehill. Obviously not a great quarterback play there. Jared Goff, I'm actually curious. That's like their one big game. I was going to see if St. Brown was out in that game. And then Arizona, a terrible team. And then they did make Geno Smith look terrible, but Geno Smith has looked bad thus far this season. So they are a good defense. They're probably still top 5 regardless. Top 10 for sure, but they haven't really played anyone too much. Just a weird line. Let's see what props we're getting for this game. The Browns defense has just been so good. It's just weird that it would be that one high scoring of a game and also that much of a difference in the spread. We do see Kareem Hunt. This is kind of rare. So 8.5 is the average sportsbook line for his receiving yards, whereas the lines that we're getting on Underdog and PrizePicks are set at 6.5. So that is seemingly a pretty big edge there. And for him, it's like we're betting on him really getting a reception in that game, and that reception going for obviously 7 yards as opposed to 9 or whatever, so that's fine. We are seeing Watson for under fantasy score is probably one that we should be looking at, although that does feel a little bit too low. He's someone that can get a rushing touchdown. Kareem Hunt over rushing yards. Their running back split has been super strange, guys, and to me it's probably just a stay away because Ford is the one leading the way. He started the second half in the last game and finished the game. Hunt, they're not getting that much work, and Pierre Strong, if he is out, then I think we're just going to see Ford get more work, and so that could be a bet, like maybe Ford over receptions, maybe Ford over fantasy score, because if he is going to get 60% of the work, there should be some sort of a good game in there. Cooper at 53 for his receiving yards is probably a little bit too low as well. Just with Watson there, that's a better passing quarterback than PJ Walker or DTR. He's one of the top receivers in the league when healthy and when his quarterback's healthy. And I think Watson's healthy enough. He definitely looked like he was hindered a little bit though. Like you could tell there's something. Let's take a peek at the Ravens then, because if they're going to be winning by that much, we should be getting some good props. I was going to say, Gus Edwards is probably one that we'd want to go in on, and that's what the data's telling us. At 7.5 for Gus Edwards, we should be going in on that. Let's take a peek at that one a little bit further. A seemingly tougher matchup, don't get me wrong. He only had 5 carries in the last game, which was a little bit different. They were also up in that game pretty early. And then in games that were a little bit closer, 19 carries, 14 carries, 16. And if Keenan Mitchell is out in this game, he currently has a hamstring injury, Gus Edwards should get a lot of work. And so we look at the snaps that he had, really any other week, he's getting about 50% of the snaps. And so I kind of expect that to happen a little bit more in this game. And all in all, again, if they're going to be up by that much, he has a good chance to get a lot of rushing attempts. Has probably a good chance to score a touchdown. Mark Andrews, that one probably feels a little bit too thin. The rest of these probably all feel a little bit too thin for me. Move on into the Lions versus the Chargers, a game that is seemingly going to be very high scoring. Maybe even potentially Ben Johnson's next position will be the head coach of the Chargers. 3-point spread, 48.5 is the over and under. So yes, a high scoring game, an appealing game to stack. Looking at the Chargers, Josh Palmer is out. Mike Williams is out. So we are going to see Quentin Johnston get a lot more work in this game, seemingly. And this is going to be a much better matchup for him this week than it was last week. We didn't really see too many other players get involved for the Chargers. It was Austin Eckler, it was Keenan Allen. That makes sense. It was a difficult matchup. Now you can get a little bit more open with it. Looking at the Lions, they are expected to get David Montgomery back in this game, which I'm very curious as to see what that means for Jahmyr Gibbs, because he has looked impressive when he's gotten the football. And I think we could see more of a 50-50 split there. And so we look at the props that we're getting for the Lions. We do see Raymond and Josh Reynolds are two that we are seeing where we are maybe looking at betting the under. And we kind of just need to take a peek at the snap counts there for those two. And if we look at last week, we'll see that Raymond played, or week 8, I should say, Raymond played about 26% of the snaps there, and Josh Reynolds played 82% of the snap. And so I don't know if the expectation is that Reynolds is not going to be playing as much, because that is a pretty low line for a game that's supposed to be pretty high scoring and a game in which, it's a pretty good matchup for opposing receivers. And I don't think we're expecting like Williams to be involved. It's kind of proven that he isn't it. Raymond is someone that, can get open. I don't know if they're expecting DPJ to be back. He's currently questionable. I don't know. I think that's probably a week away. And so I don't know. I'm not touching those two. I think I'd rather bet the over there, honestly. So probably better bets on underdog for both those two. We do see Jared Goff for over 2 passing touchdowns at 1.5 is seemingly a good one. I don't mind that one, but again, we're not really seeing any fantasy score props that would echo that. And so, this is a weird one. Probably just staying away. I mean, yes, I like Jared Goff for over 1.5 passing touchdowns in this game that's supposed to be that high scoring and in this seemingly very good matchup. But all in all, that's probably the only bet in this game that's going to be appealing for us. So let's look at the Chargers here. The Chargers, we are getting some okay ones. Again, rush yards for Herbert, I don't want to touch. Rush attempts for Austin Eckler is definitely interesting. I don't know if I like it. Feels a little bit game script dependent. The Detroit Lions have been a team that is tough to rush the football against, but the Chargers haven't really been able to get their rushing game going. And we have seen Austin Eckler still get a bunch of carries, 14, 15, 14, 14, and it's been terrible. And so I actually don't mind that one. They're setting up the rest of their game by trying to establish a run with Eckler. Now, yes, they've been up in these 2 games, but against KC, he's still got the carries. Against Dallas, he still got the carries. So seemingly, we are still getting a good prop bet there for 12.5 rush attempts. We also are seeing Justin Herbert for over 35.5 passing attempts to be a seemingly good one there as well. That's kind of crazy. I'm kind of fine with it, though. A high-scoring game, that does make sense. But if that's happening, yeah, we probably are looking at some receiving props, receptions props, but all we are getting is Eckler and Keenan right now. I do think Johnston's going to be more involved. I would hope he can get his line at 3 receptions. That'd be great, because then I'd be fine betting the over there. We got a few more games here. The Falcons versus the Cardinals, another game that I think maybe will have some stackability to it. So the Falcons and the Cardinals game is a 44 for the over and under and about a 1.5 point spread. So a very close game. Kyler Murray is expected back in this game. We do need to get news on James Conner, who needs to be activated from the IR. If he sits, we're going to be looking at a lot of Keontae Ingram, and it might actually be a decent game for him if that occurs. Looking at the other side, the Falcons, I think they're still going to be starting Taylor Heineke, and I say it that way because he hasn't looked better than Ritter, which sucks for Falcons fans because Ritter didn't look good either. Now, Ritter was turnovering the football a little bit too much, too sloppy with the football, and that is seemingly why they went with Heineke, who I wouldn't say is even safe with the football, but at least he's not making, I don't want to say dumb mistakes, but not even careless mistakes. Sloppy mistake. Ritter's fumbles were sloppy, whereas Heineke's mistakes are just him trying to be aggressive, him trying to be Brett Favre, per se. We do have a big piece of injury news. Mac Hollins is out in this game, but Drake London is expected back, so not too crazy. So I think we're going to see Drake London step up into his normal snap share. We should be expecting that. And then Van Jefferson as the receiver number 2, but Hodge played himself a pretty good game last week, and so he's someone that maybe props-wise we could be looking at. If we are getting any good props, we'll take a peek. So looking at the Falcons here, this one's funny for Bijan Robinson. So a lot of people are projecting Bijan Robinson to get more involved in this game simply because it kind of seems like that way with the comments that Arthur Smith has been making, and he did get 11 and 11 the last couple of games. I don't mind it. I'm okay with it. If you guys want to run that one out there, you can. Janu Smith for over 27.5 receiving yards. I don't know if I want to go on to that one too much, just given the fact that London is going to be back. He's going to be the guy we should be looking at first. Taylor Heineke pass attempts, not much there. Drake London, 4 receptions. That seems low to me. I think it should be at 4.5. And I know the Vegas line is at 3.5, but that seems a little bit low to me. So really only one good prop bet there, which sucks. I was hoping we would get better fantasy score prop bets because this, I think, will be a good game, a game that we can attack and stack. Looking at Arizona, Michael Wilson. Yeah, Michael Wilson is expected back. And another one that if Kyler Murray is healthy, ready to go, that seems low to me, as does Trey McBride. Like, do we expect this offense to take another step? Maybe. Will it most likely stay the same? Probably. But I do think someone like Michael Wilson should see a little bit of a benefit with Kyler Murray in there, who's a little bit more prone to throwing outside than Dobbs. You know, Dobbs is good at throwing what's there, where Kyler's obviously much better. But all in all, we're not seeing that many good props here. We move on into the next game. We got two more left, the Commanders versus the Seahawks. So I don't know what to expect here because Geno has looked bad, but this is going to be a good matchup against the Washington Commanders. You got DK Metcalf, seemingly another game more healthy. It is a 45 or so over and under, a very appealing game there. Almost a 6-point spread in favor of Seattle winning as well, which to me also seems a little weird, actually very weird. And I don't know what to do with that. Honestly, like Kenneth Walker, who has been seeing his snaps being limited, like would he get his workhorse workload again, especially after Zach Charbonnet has looked bad, not lived up to the hype? Maybe there's something there. Looking at the Washington side, I don't know. That's just another strange line. Washington's been good at keeping games close, and I would argue they've looked better than the Seahawks. I hope we get some good props in this game as well. I want to stack this game. All right, so Terry McLaurin over fantasy score at 12.5. There we go. All right, now let's see Sam Howell. Any for him? Sam Howell over 18. Oh, that's high. Jahan Dotson over 9.5. I'm fine with that. Curtis Samuel, is he still questionable? Is he expected back? He is. So that should hurt Jahan Dotson a little bit, but also it did seem like a little bit of a breakout there for Dotson in last week's game and even in the game before that. And so, yeah, I don't mind over 9.5, especially given a decent matchup against Seattle. Yeah, we have a decent stacking opportunity here. Terry over fantasy score, Sam Howell maybe over fantasy score, and then Jahan Dotson over fantasy score. And I say maybe for Howell because we are seeing that the under is being favorited there, so I don't exactly love that. But the fact that we have Dotson and Terry for over fantasy score, I'm fine with that. Let's go ahead and take a peek at Seattle. They're going to be difficult because, again, they've been playing from behind, and for some reason, they don't like Kenneth Walker as a receiving back, which is a little bit strange to me. We are seeing Noah Fant. We have a decent prop bet on for receiving yards. Jackson Smith for over 9. That's not bad for a fantasy score. He's someone that has been catching on a little bit more in the second half of this season. 7 targets last week. He's had 4 and 7 targets. A seemingly good matchup, a high scoring game. I like that. I like the over for JSN there. And he has looked a little bit better as well as the weeks have progressed. After that, I don't know. They all feel a little bit too thin. And yeah, for like Walker and Charbonnet there, I think we're probably just staying away from their props. And so getting into the last game, we got the Giants versus the Cowboys, an ugly game. The Cowboys are projected to win by nearly 18 points. And it's also a low over and under. For the Giants, we know why. Their first and second string quarterbacks are going to be out. They're starting a rookie quarterback who, albeit he's not going to be the worst rookie quarterback to start, because Clayton Tune, we saw last week that yes, the Cleveland Browns defense was indeed the lock of the week. And hopefully you guys saw that and were able to get to that as I was able to. I mentioned that a bunch. I'm hoping we kind of get that same situation for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, my question is, what can we expect for playing time for the Giants in this game if it's going to be a blowout, and even for the Cowboys as well? It's probably going to be a game in which I'm going to suggest we stay away from, but we'll go through the process here. We'll start with Dallas because they are going to be a team that obviously should be ahead. And yeah, Tony Pollard, wow, that's very aggressive for the under. That's pretty much saying that he's not going to score a touchdown. Interesting there. And I could agree with that. Like Rico Dwaddle probably would get more work in this game if it's a blowout pretty fast. We see Jake Ferguson for over fantasy score is seemingly a good one there. CeeDee Lamb for over fantasy score is seemingly a good one. I'm kind of okay with those two, but again, I hate that doesn't correlate because we have Dak for under fantasy score. Like, all right, that doesn't make sense. But I'm fine with Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb. If you want to take the risk then with Dak, I'm fine with that. Let's take a quick peek at the Giants and we'll begin out here. A lot of stacking opportunities though, guys, this week. I'm very excited about that. Slayton for over receiving yards. Whew, he's going to play a lot of snaps. No, I'm not touching any of these at all. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, you'd hope he would get more than 60% of the snaps in this game where they're going to be playing from behind, but not that appealing. So guys, these are going to be the best bets that we are currently getting right now. They're not going to be my bet of the day, so I'm putting it on a different slide. These are the best bets on the board that we have currently. This stuff can change, and it probably will, but I'm fine with these. And I do just want to start with saying that I think we have a lot of stacking opportunities. I think we want to focus on those stacking opportunities because we have a lot of correlation this week, thankfully. And so I think that's going to be the approach to go with. So I'm kind of going to give 2 bets of the day out for this slip. We are getting a lot of good tackles and assist props right now. I expect these all to probably get bumped, but these have been kind of a nice spot. I added this into the data about 2 weeks ago, and it's been, pretty good. And my favorite over fantasy score prop is going to be Hunter Henry. Now let's just touch on my other favorite props. Probably going to be looking at fantasy score prop or tackles and assists. I guess, we could use these. And so these aren't exactly going to be the best bets on the board per se. I mean, most of them are. I mean, these are all bets in which give us a 40 or 54% edge on the slate, but these are ones that I see as a little bit better. I do like Madison to have a good game in the receiving game, just with Cam Akers gone. He should be locked into at least 4 targets and probably 2 receptions or so. Just need those to be good receptions. That's probably the most risky one. If you guys don't want to use that, that's fine. And then we're getting into some receiving props. These two may be a little bit touchdown dependent to get there. That game with the Giants could blow out. And I will say we have a decent correlation there for Dallas. Tony Pollard under fantasy score. And then we're looking at CeeDee Lamb over as well as Jake Ferguson. To me, that correlates pretty well. Okay, that's a slip that I'm going to be running out there. That's where I say very good week, it seems like, for stacking. Jordan Addison for over 10 fantasy score. Kind of fine with that. Don't love it. Should be force-fed targets, though. Dobbs, I just don't expect to have as good of a game. We'll see, though. One more week ready, though. Michael Thomas over 9 fantasy score. That's seemingly a good one. Didn't get there last week. Had a terrible game last week, but that's because everyone else feasted. And so that's going to happen. You kind of expect that to bounce back the other way. And then Hunter Henry, probably to me, the best prop bet that we have, should be able to get 3 receptions, 40 yards, or 4 receptions, 30 yards. And then we just need 0.1 more, right? And I think we'll get that. That's going to be all for this video. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want access to the tools that you saw available in this video, click the link in the description below. $10 a month gives you access to the cheat sheet for PrizePicks and Underdog. Thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.